Hello, welcome back to part 2 of Talking Europe on France 24. Now, in this programme, we're going to be looking closer at the EU's smallest member state by physical size and by population. Malta joined the EU in 2004. It is perhaps best known all around the world as a sunny Mediterranean holiday destination, but it has also made global headlines recently for darker reasons, for its role as an entry country into the EU for thousands of undocumented migrants, and a few months ago for the murder of an investigative journalist who'd been investigating allegations of high-level corruption on the island. Now, to tell us about some of the challenges that Malta is currently taking on, its place in Europe, we welcome to the studio Maltese Foreign Minister Carmelo Abela. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for the invitation.
Now, you've been Foreign Minister of Malta for around about 1 year. As I mentioned, your country has been getting a lot of notice for migration, for corruption, different stories. As Foreign Minister of the EU's smallest member state, what are your priorities for Malta?
Well, our priorities are those to be bridge builders when we need to serve as such. We have a number of conflicts going around in the world. Most of them are in the Mediterranean region, when one considers issues in North Africa, just to mention one country, Libya. The Middle East peace process, which there is no peace process going on at the time being. Syria and the regional countries that surround Syria. So a number of conflicts going on, and all have an impact, directly or indirectly, on the Mediterranean. So we need to solve these together through multilateralism, for example. And it's a priority for us to give our part, irrespective of size. And that is the priority, or one of the priorities that we are giving in the Foreign Affairs portfolio.
Well, we are recording this in Paris, of course, our home studios. I'd like to talk a bit about Malta's relationship with France. There was a bit of a war of words recently between France and your neighbour, Italy, over this migrant rescue ship run by charity workers, the Aquarius. Both Italy and Malta refused to allow the ship to dock. We know that relations between Paris and Rome were strained by this whole situation. Italy said that Paris was delivering unfair lessons about migration. Does Malta feel the same way?
Well, I think that we need to see the big picture. We have been dealing with migration since the very inception, at least from the Central Mediterranean, in the beginning of the year 2000s. 2001, 2002, basically when all the migratory flows from Central Mediterranean in large numbers started during that time. Most of the time we were left alone. So we could point fingers, we could say that the EU as a bloc did not do as much as we pretended, and rightly so, I must say. So I think we need to look at the big picture rather than pointing fingers to our neighbors. And the way we see it is that migration is a challenge not only for the border member states that are to the south of the Mediterranean, but it's a challenge for EU 28. We are still 28 members, and I think it's for the whole bloc to tackle the issue of migration, both in the external aspect and also, and I say, make a stress on the internal aspect of migration, where we know and that we have more challenges than the external aspect of migration.
Well, sticking with the issue of these rescue ships in the Mediterranean, if we come back to the Aquarius, Amnesty International said that the decision by Malta not to allow it to dock at your ports set a deadly precedent. Would Malta refuse to accept other ships of that kind in future?
There is an investigation going on at the time being. I think that in one of the circumstances surrounding the Lifeline, an NGO boat.
Another ship,
yes.
A couple of weeks later.
Yes. We discovered that maybe things are not always as clear as they should be, in terms of registration, for example, in terms of what these ships can do, in terms of capability and possibilities. So I think that we need to let also the investigations take their course. And
are you against the idea of these sort of charity-run rescue ships operating in the Mediterranean in that case?
It's not a question of being in favor or against. It's a question of, first and foremost, working together also with Operation Sophia, for example, which is an operation of the European Union. There were other operations also taking place under the leadership of Italy, although there were some changes last year. It's a question of coordinating even better what's happening with clear rules and regulations that apply for everyone. So if, for example, ships operating under Operation Sophia cannot go into the Libyan territorial waters, the question is, how come that NGO ships can go in the Libyan territorial waters? We saw some adverts, for example, in social media that we are here and we can take migrants. So the thing is that we need to work together also in saving lives, and we need to keep all the time that this is a humanitarian issue as well.
Well, there was some progress on the migration situation at the recent European summit in June. A new deal was begun, I think we can say, rather than concluded, about how to handle undocumented migrants coming into the continent. One agreement is to try and set up what are called controlled centres for processing migrant applications for asylum, should they want to do so. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty about what this all means. What do you understand by controlled centres? Some people seem to understand that they would be closed, almost detention centres. Would you be in favour of that?
I think we need to see the details as well of these proposals. And I must add that these proposals are not new. We have been talking about these proposals for a number of years. We also involved UNHCR and IOM because they are key partners in whatever we do.
There's a voluntary basis is the idea for these controlled centres. Would Malta be volunteering to set up one, a couple, a few controlled centres to process applications in this way?
Well, we have to see the capabilities of each and every member state and how these are going to arrive in member states, if these control centres are going to be in a member state. I think there are many things to consider before, which means that how they are going to arrive in member states.
So you wouldn't rule out opening a controlled centre?
Well, we had controlled centres in the past, and we were criticised as a member state, together with other member states, because we had these controlled centres. Now, what is the meaning of a controlled centre today as opposed to controlled centres of the past?
So you're looking for more clarity.
What's the purpose of that? There is the idea to have these controlled centres in Africa itself. Now, where? That's the question.
Is that preferable to you than having them inside the EU?
We need to avoid the risk of death, either at sea, and the Mediterranean Sea became a deadly sea, either at the Sahara Desert. That's point number one. Point number two, we know that there is a criminal activity going on. The human traffickers, the smugglers that are making good money out of the desperation of some people. And we need to avoid and combat all this. So I think that we need to find ways and means of what we call regular, legal paths towards Europe. And there are some proposals on this.
All right. Well, it's interesting you bring that up because we've actually got a report that we've prepared about an alternative to the current migration chaos, really, that's going on. We can watch this report from our correspondent Natalia Mendoza in Italy. This is a project launched a few months ago by various Italian charities with cooperation from the Italian government to provide safe and legal asylum paths for migrants in Africa.
Thousands of refugees, fleeing from the dictatorship in Eritrea, live in this camp in the north of Ethiopia. Most of them share the same dream, to reach Europe. These humanitarian workers have arrived with good news. within a few weeks, this family will be welcomed in Italy.
This is an opportunity that we are currently giving to certain people. We know that this will radically change your life. You'll have to leave here and start a new life, and you will be welcomed by communities in Italy.
Daniele Albanese is one of the project's coordinators. He's a member of one of the 3 Catholic NGOs that organises these humanitarian corridors.
There are many victims of torture, victims of violences, sexual exploitation, and so on. And of course, children. We want to save them from a life in a refugee camp. That means that the people, they don't have to be trafficked and they don't have to be smuggled through the desert or by boat in the Mediterranean Sea. They don't have to die.
Yamina is visibly relieved.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so grateful to Italy for accepting us. We got here without taking risks, and that has saved us.
Everyone is joyful. This humanitarian corridor project is entirely financed by the Italian Episcopal Conference. Its success will depend on the number of visas granted by the populist Italian government.
We have to find legal routes for migrants in Europe. The humanitarian corridor is a perfect legal solution that guarantees the safety of those that travel and those that receive them. We suggest that the whole of Europe puts this system in place.
Since these humanitarian corridors were established 2 years ago, 1,600 refugees have taken this route to Italy.
We're coming back to our studio guest then, Maltese Foreign Minister Carmelo Abela. We saw one idea there for how legal, safe migration could work. Would you be in favour of that kind of template?
Yes, I will. That is the kind of migration that we should aim, which is less risky. It will avoid and destroy the human smugglers and traffickers, their activity, legal activity they are doing. And also, since this is controlled, we know that even the reception in Europe will be much, much better.
All right, I'd like to move on to another story from Malta that's been a huge preoccupation around the continent. The murder in October last year of the investigative journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia. She was a long-time corruption investigative reporter, particularly. This gained a lot of attention outside Malta, worries about media freedom, the safety of journalists. A report from members of the European Parliament recently claims that police in Malta are not following up leads, and the investigation into this murder has stalled. Is this investigation going anywhere at this point?
It is. We took action, we as local authorities, when it comes to investigations, and 3 were arrested on this. Now the investigations are still going on to see whether these 3 people acted on their own or there was someone else behind the killing of Daphne. Daphne was, for a long period of time, a critic of mainly people within my own party. And nothing happened to her for 20-25 years. I mean, we are very sorry for what happened. I mean, the government issued a statement as soon as this killing happened. Of course, we condemned immediately, and we said that we are going to do our utmost to find who was behind and who actually did this killing.
And one of the cases that Daphne Caruana Galizia was investigating had implications for your Prime Minister, Joseph Muscat. I must stress, allegations only. I'm not accusing anybody. But there was a remarkably similar situation recently in Slovakia. The Slovakian Prime Minister implicated in some allegations being investigated by another journalist who was murdered there. Now, in that case, the Slovakian Prime Minister actually did resign. There have been calls for your Prime Minister to resign as well, make a show in that sense, that his government is taking this seriously.
Well, you mentioned an important word, which is allegations. Some people are talking as if allegations were truth or were reality. The Prime Minister and his family suffered from accusations and allegations that the Prime Minister said that they are not true and unfounded. Actually, the Prime Minister did not stop there. He himself went to an investigative magistrate. That's the system, how it works in Malta for many years. Rule of law is in Malta. Freedom of journalists is in Malta, and we actually also amended the law to make it even better. So I refuse those who say that rule of law does not exist. I refuse to accusations that say that we don't have freedom of expression. And if you follow, and I know that you follow what's happening in Malta, you are aware that there is freedom of expression in different ways, through social media, to the media, and everything. So I think that having allegations and accusations, one has to prove whether this is the truth or not. And I think that the course of investigations needs to take its place.
And you can guarantee that there will be, as the European Commission called for, an independent, thorough investigation.
Yes, I mean, the fact that not only the Maltese investigators were and are investigating, but there are other international investigators, it's a sign that we are doing our utmost, and that it is a free and independent, even because it's not only the police, but it's also the inquiring magistrate that is investigating this case, and the family and also the lawyers of the family said that they have full faith in this magistrate as well.
All right, we will have to leave it there. Thanks very much
Thank you very much.
talking to us. Carmelo Abela, Foreign Minister of Malta, with us here on Talking Europe. Thanks to you as well for watching our programme. We'll see you soon.
Hello, I'm Annette Young, and in this special edition of the 51%, we're here in Cyprus, an island still divided between its Greek and Turkish communities. Helping to keep the peace are UN troops. So we're looking at the greater role that women are now playing in peacekeeping missions, not only just here, but right across the world.
The 51%, presented by Annette Young on France 24 and France24.com.